up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the ABNF podcast. I'm here with my buddy Nick. Nick, I know that the last episode that we made was 2 weeks back when Damian Lillard got traded from Portland to Milwaukee. And one of those
Yep.
pieces in that trade was Jrue Holiday. And it looks
Yep.
like Jrue Holiday is on the move again. And we want to react to that. I know we haven't had a chance to, but Nick, as soon as I dropped the video on our channel, Jrue Holiday got traded 10 minutes after that. How are we feeling about it?
I mean, I'm happy for him. I mean, Boston, that team's going to be nuts. You know, that top four on paper is probably the best top four in the NBA that you could have, especially with the hard cap. That's pretty impressive that Boston's able to pull this off. You know, I was wrong. I thought the Knicks would have made a move just because they have all those draft picks. But, you know, Boston on paper looks really, really nice. You know, they got a really good starting five, obviously. But, you know, they're really relying on Kristaps Porzingis to stay healthy. And now they traded Robert Williams, and Al Horford's getting older and stuff. So it's like if Kristaps Porzingis gets hurt, especially, and you got to go against like Milwaukee and stuff, like
Mhm.
Giannis and Brook Lopez, it's like that's going to be tough.
Oh yeah, it's going to be really tough. And I think
Yeah.
another thing too, like you just mentioned with their lack of size, something that they've had a lot of success with is basically just having like everything around and having a deep team, but not having the
Mhm.
point guard. Now they have the point guard they needed, but now they don't have
Yep.
any size. So it's kind of like it's a trade-off. And I'm very nervous for their front court because, like you mentioned, the two guys, that's it. They have Luke Cornett, but Luke Cornett's not going to be some difference maker on your team. He's more
Yeah.
of like a 13th, 14th guy on your bench that maybe plays a couple minutes a game.
Hmm.
But Kristaps Porzingis has to be healthy this year. He's got to at least play 65 to 70 games if you want to actually be like taken as like we're going to be legit. This team is going to be the
Hmm.
favorites out of the East. I still think they are on paper favorites in the East. They have the best. I would say they have the best starting lineup. I feel like their bench
Yes.
is still solid because they kept Derek White. I think that was one of the most important things they did was keep him. Obviously, get rid of
Hmm.
Malcolm Brogdon, he was pretty mad already
Not
because
happy being there.
yeah, because they tried to trade him earlier this offseason when they did the Porzingis trade originally. And the whole reason why he came back was because the Clippers didn't want to take Malcolm Brogdon. Ironically, they cared about his health, but then you
Hmm.
got guys like Kawhi and PG that cannot stay healthy. I don't know. That's irony right
It's
there.
very
So
interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
No, very interesting. You know, Jrue Holiday's obviously, you know, they got rid of Marcus Smart. They got a
yeah,
guy, in my opinion, that's not only better offensively,
oh yeah,
not only better being able to distribute the basketball, but
yep,
in my opinion, Jrue Holiday is the best guard defender this game has in the NBA right now. And
oh yeah.
so Boston's like, they needed a point guard, but they needed a guy like that's like a consistent offensive threat like Jrue Holiday is. Like, think about this. Like, Jrue Holiday is literally the fourth option offensively on this team. That's
Yeah,
insane.
I'm not. I mean, man, it's kind of crazy that like this all just kind of has happened in the last 2 weeks, and I feel like
Hmm.
we had like nothing going on for 2 months, and then all of a
Hmm.
sudden, like two top point guards get traded to two competitive teams in the East, and probably I mean, like we already knew Milwaukee and Boston were going to be like the top teams in the East, but now they've solidified themselves. Anybody
Oh,
behind them
yeah.
is kind of basically like a runner up, and they're not going to
Hmm.
really pose a threat. I think one of the biggest things, and I know we talked about this last time, Nick, is that I knew that they were going to get a better package back for Jrue Holiday than what they got for Dame. And
Yep.
it was just because Boston has so many assets to give, they
Hmm.
were able to facilitate a trade like this. I like Robert Williams. I know we've talked about this off air about how Robert Williams cannot stay healthy. He's a great
That's true.
defender, doesn't
Hmm.
really have an offensive game, but maybe he makes a career for himself in Portland. A
Hmm.
young team they're trying to build, and you can see that like you're gonna have another guy in DeAndre Ayton also playing there, but maybe he's gonna get moved. We don't know what his future looks like. And then Malcolm
Hmm.
Brogdon can be a mentor for guys like Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons. And then you also have that draft capital that you got. So they got I believe they have the Golden State Warriors first round pick, which is
Hmm.
unprotected top four. So, and then they also had another draft pick that they gave as well, a first round pick. I don't know if that's the 2029 or the other one that they gave, but either way,
Yeah.
Boston came out of this with they still have assets, so they might be able to still grab somebody around the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm. It's just Boston, man. Their front office, they're just goated at making trades.
Yeah, you got to give it to them, man.
It's
Brad Stevens, wizard.
it's still mind blowing that they didn't give up literally nothing for Kristaps Porzingis after having the career year that he just had.
Yeah.
It's just kind of wild to me how that's happened. But Boston, like my personal opinion though, Boston does have, probably the best overall like rotation in
Mhm.
basketball, with their starting five. And then they got a little bit, they have a solid bench still, but I personally still have Milwaukee over Boston. I
Okay.
might be in the minority. I just think with the lack of size, if Boston really doesn't figure that out, either at the trade deadline or in the buyout market,
Mhm.
Giannis is going to eat this team alive.
Oh yeah.
And then when they had no choice but to double them, Milwaukee's got some shooters. Pat Connaughton's the question mark being the starting two guard,
Mhm.
you know, but I personally still see Milwaukee coming out of the East and making it to the NBA Finals if Dame and Giannis stay healthy. And Chris Middleton could be that consistent. Now he finally had a full off season of being like fully healthy and stuff. I think he could reinvent himself like he did when they won the NBA championship. He's been an all-star once or twice, I think, too. So I just like obviously Boston has the much better backcourt and their forwards are much better, but you know, they don't have any size. And if Kristaps Porzingis is hurt, you're going to rely on Al Horford to be an old Al Horford to be
You
playing 30
cannot
plus
trust
minutes
him.
every night. Like they're going to be in deep trouble, man. Deep trouble.
I mean, I'm gonna say this right now. If Al Horford is gonna continue to have this magic, only him and LeBron are like the two people that like keep like beating father time out. Because I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Al Horford had a great season last year, but you're not
Mm-hmm.
expecting that, and you shouldn't rely off of that because if you're relying off of a 37, 38-year-old guy to be able to be your best rim defender and then also your only big man outside of
Mm-hmm.
Kristaps, you're
Yeah.
going to be in a world of trouble. I agree with you. I like Milwaukee slightly over Boston right now because of the
Mm-hmm.
size difference, like you mentioned. But I also would say too is that I think that Milwaukee right now, when they are healthy, they have a really good team.
They
I
really
think
do.
that their hole is a little bit more manageable than what Boston might have to deal with because of the size difference. The
Mm-hmm.
only thing I don't like about Milwaukee right now is that they don't have a true starting shooting guard. They're going to probably have Pat Connaughton playing the two. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
really like Pat being in the starting lineup. I think he's more of a bench guy, but that's just my opinion on that. I
Mm-hmm.
do feel they are a little thin in the guard area. I know that they just picked up Cameron Payne
Mm-hmm.
from free agency, so that was a good move. If Cam Payne can play like he did in Phoenix, great pickup. You have a backup point guard for Dame Lillard, and he can play some solid defense for you. So that's a great move right there. But I would like to see them make one more move for me to like lock in that Milwaukee pick to make it to the finals. But I think in a 7-game series, way too early prediction. I think Milwaukee wins this. I think Giannis is the best player between all of these guys. I think that Dame Lillard is the guy that you need in the clutch moment. And I just
Mm-hmm.
feel that while I agree that Jason Tatum has shown up in big time moments and Jaylen Brown is always going to be a solid guy, Jrue Holiday always shrinks in the playoffs. And that's my one fear that he cannot get buckets because he has struggled every year. And Nick, you called this out a couple episodes ago about how Jrue Holiday's percentage goes down every year, the same amount. I think it was like 10% his field goal percentage and 3-point field goal percentage goes down
Mm-hmm.
in the playoffs. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. How do you feel? I mean, how do you feel about that? Because I know you said that, Drew's going to likely be the fourth option, which I agree. I think Kristaps will be the third option. But
Mm-hmm.
do you think that Drew not being able to score in the postseason is going to play a factor into how far Boston will be able to get in the playoffs?
It can, but the one thing that Jrue Holiday has really improved on his game is his perimeter game. He's a very good 3-point shooter. And he was fifth in the NBA this past season in catch and shoot threes. I feel like a lot of the times with this team, he's going to be sitting in the corner somewhere with Tatum and Brown. They're going to continue to keep playing this isolation basketball, and they're just going to rely on Jrue Holiday just to be a catch and shoot kind of guy.
Yeah.
Jrue Holiday, yeah, he is a point guard, but he's not like a general, like he's not a floor general point guard that we've always talked about that Boston really needed. Like, yeah, he could bring the ball up, absolutely. Yeah, he could call a play out and run a set play for like Tatum or Brown, or maybe
Mhm.
Kristaps get the ball to Kristaps in the post or something like that. But like they got a huge upgrade. This
Oh
guy's
yeah,
kind of like a
yeah,
Marcus Smart, but much better. Did they really solve this floor general point guard issue? I don't think so. Derek White's a great player. I think they're gonna have no choice but to trade him to get some more big help. I
yeah.
mean,
They're gonna need. They're gonna need
they
that.
need some front court help, and if there's not really anybody in the market, or there's not like a good, power forward or center that's out there in the market at the trade deadline, I feel like they're gonna have no choice but to get rid of Derek White, and that'd be a huge loss.
Yeah, because he's going to be your sixth man for you, right? Like we know how pivotal he's been for Boston since he got there 2 seasons ago. And the fact is, outside of like their starting five, and then if you think about it, their bench is going to consist really of Derek White and Al Horford, and they might play Al Horford as a starter. We don't know. We're just
Yeah.
basing it off a hypothetical right now that he doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just going to be a bench guy. But if they do start Al Horford at the four, right? Who do you really have on your bench? I know Gallinari is going to be coming back from the
Yep.
injury, but I don't think of Gallinari as a big man. I just think of him as like a very tall, like small forward, but doesn't
Mm-hmm.
really pose a size issue necessarily for another team.
Yeah.
Because he's a perimeter player. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to really think of anybody else right now, currently on Boston, because of the trades, and obviously, like you got rid of a guy like Marcus Smart and Malcolm Brogdon and Robert Williams. So I don't really know where the
Mm-hmm.
depth's at right now. But
And Grant Williams is gone too.
and Grant Williams, yeah, that's another good point. Another guy that was, that's been a big piece for Boston the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when they made it to the finals, Grant Williams was huge with all those 3-point shots against Milwaukee in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they just don't have the grit that they had. I feel like with Marcus Smart
Mm-hmm.
and obviously with Grant Williams, I don't think Jrue presents it in that way, but he's going to be the best defender that they've had. I personally think Jrue Holiday is a better defender than Marcus Smart.
All
I just think he's
facts.
going to be more humble about it. Like Jrue has never been the kind of guy that's going to like talk shit. He lets his game do the talking for him,
Yeah.
and that's and it's a really good point to like mention about like if they what they'll really need. Like I really am just curious to see how Boston starts the season off, especially if
Mm-hmm.
Kristaps gets hurt.
And what's very interesting too is like besides Kristaps Porzingis, and if you go against Milwaukee, that's got Giannis, Brook Lopez, and Bobby Portis. That's gonna be in the paint a lot. Except Brook Lopez is more a 3-point shooter, of course, but there's no rim protection on this team besides Kristaps Porzingis. So if Kristaps Porzingis ends up getting in foul trouble during the playoffs or something like that, if he ends up becoming like a Jaren Jackson that can't stay on the floor, you're not going to rely on the 38-year-old Al Horford to guard Giannis?
Yeah, you
Oh
can't.
no, I'm
You can't.
sorry. I'm sorry. That's not going to work. It's just
No,
not.
no, and you can't rely. You just cannot rely off of that. I think also the other thing with Milwaukee too is they are older. Like I know we're talking
Mm-hmm,
about Al Horford, being old, but I mean Brook Lopez is 35 years old.
mm-hmm.
Jay Crowder is starting to get up there. I think at like 34, 35 as well.
Yeah.
Um, and Chris Middleton, I believe, is what 31. I think
Mm-hmm,
he's starting to. So they're an older team for sure,
yeah.
and I think that's going to be a team also that we're going to have to look at in terms of health.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree. I mean, you got Brook Lopez and Giannis and Bobby Portis all down low. Boston's getting cooked in the paint. They're not going to be able
Yeah.
to have any answers for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It just reminds me of like it's like what we just saw out of Team USA. They had no size. They're by far the most talented team. Like Boston right now they have the
Oh
most
yeah,
talent. They really do. But if you're not gonna, play the gritty defense, if you're not gonna box out or anything like that, and with Kristaps Porzingis, who knows if he's gonna stay healthy this year? Who knows if he can stay out of foul trouble in these big, pivotal moments of like these big games, and like they might get eaten up alive on the boards this year if Tatum and Brown or Jrue Holiday, if these other guys don't step up in the rebounding game, especially a team like Milwaukee.
yeah, yeah. And I think too, with Milwaukee, one thing that I'm really curious to see is how well will Chris Middleton fit into this new role of being the third
Hmm.
piece? Because I feel like he's been the
Yep.
second banana for so long to
Hmm.
Giannis that now he's kind of taking more of a back seat, being the third guy. Does
Yep.
he? Can he still produce in the same way? Because I don't know if he's the kind of guy that likes to create his own shot, loves the mid range, muddy mid range Middleton, always like
Hmm.
with the money dance. And I don't know if he wants to be in the corner shooting threes all the time, and he's not a bad 3-point shooter. But I'm just curious to see that because I know Dame is going to definitely be the second guy. He's going to be taking the second most shots on the team, which there's nothing wrong with that because Dame, again, when healthy, is top 10 to 15 player in the league. Depending on who you talk to, some people value Dame more, other people don't. So
Yeah.
he is going to be he's going to be the factor, I think, when they play in the playoffs. And we'll see if this trade works out because I think I think for Jrue, this will definitely be something like, hey, look, you traded me. This is what happens when you trade me. If he shuts
Hmm.
down Dame,
Oh,
remember
yeah. We
that
all
will
remember what happened.
that headline would be crazy.
Yeah.
Trade for Dame just to get shut down by the guy you traded him for. That'd be nasty. I don't think it'll happen, but if it does, that's crazy. Nick, I got to ask you this too. How many games do you give before Kristaps gets hurt? Because I think we both know he's going to get hurt, but how many games are you going to give it?
I think he plays about 57 to 60 games.
Okay. Okay. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I would have him
I think he played,
probably.
what did he play, 65 last season? That was the most he's played in a single season, right? Was it 65 games he played?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I
Yeah.
can look that up real quickly to tell you how
Yeah.
many games he played last year because I do know that his injury history has been so bad, even his first year.
Yeah.
So he did play. You are right. He did play 65 games last year, but to
65.
give
Hmm.
but to give you an idea, the year before he only played 17 games. So I mean, it's a roller coaster with him sometimes with his health, and
Hmm.
I understand a bigger guy, knee, foot problems are always going to come up.
Yeah.
I'd give him probably about 50 to 55 games, I think. I think he'll play something around that. I think between 15 to 20 games into the season, he's going to have a slight tweak in some like area because again, they're going to be expecting him to
Yeah.
play 35 to 38 minutes a game as your center. So
Yeah.
I'm really curious, man, to see how that's gonna end up working out. And we'll see. Well, that can definitely alter the trade market, especially for guys that are looking to get traded, teams
Hmm.
that are looking to move on from guys. We don't know
Yep.
what that's gonna look like, but
Hmm.
I'm excited, man. Are you excited for the NBA
Yeah.
season? It's 13 days
I'm
away.
I'm yeah, I'm so hyped, man. And for Boston, their strategy this year was just to out talent the league. That was their plan this offseason, just to strictly out talent the league. They did do that, but that doesn't mean the teams that are the most stacked, even in recent history, they have not won the championship.
Nope,
Brooklyn
they have
Nets with
not.
Katie Kyrie, they never won a championship
Nope.
with James Harden and them. You're looking at Phoenix with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, CP3, DeAndre, and everyone's like, oh my God, they only went to the Western Conference semifinals.
It's
So when
true.
you out talent the league, you best not miss.
No, because you get one shot sometimes with these teams, especially
Yeah,
with health and
yeah,
contract negotiations. You
yeah.
might only get 1 or 2 years
Could
out
you
of it.
imagine if Boston doesn't even make the Eastern Conference Finals?
Ooh, that's going to be
That would
rough
be an
too.
ultimate failure.
And they just signed Jalen Brown to that massive extension. And
Hmm.
Jason Tatum's is coming up for his
Yeah,
eligibility for his supermax. So
yeah,
imagine you're going to sign Jason Tatum as well to all this money, and you can't even
yeah,
make the Eastern Conference Finals with Jrue Holiday and
yeah,
Kristaps.
yeah. Like I love the moves that Boston made. I make the same moves if I'm in the front office. Kristaps Porzingis is a great player when he's healthy, and obviously when everyone saw that Dame went to Milwaukee, Boston goes, "Yeah, we have absolutely nobody that can guard Dame, and we just traded Marcus Smart that was included in the Kristaps trade, so we're gonna go get Jrue Holiday." Which that's fine. That's a great move, great player and all, but like you're completely lacking size now. And Jrue Holiday, he's not a point guard.
No. He's an
So it's like
off-ball guard.
it's Tatum and Brown. They're just gonna play this like ISO kind of basketball. Like Milwaukee's gonna be very good defensively. Now I question their backcourt defense. Pat
Mhm.
Connaughton's an energy guy. He's gonna give it his all. But I gotta see if Damian Lillard's gonna be able to play some defense. If Chris Middleton, let's see how he looks this year. If he's fully healthy or not. There's some question marks on that. But their front court, they can protect the rim at a high level. So what Tatum
Yeah.
and Brown are trying to get to the paint, I feel like Milwaukee's going to force those guys to shoot a lot of perimeter shots, a lot of ISO. I feel like Boston's going to be playing too much ISO still, and I think Milwaukee's going to play better as a team. They're not more talented than Boston. I just see Milwaukee learning how to play together more than Boston. That's why I personally believe that Milwaukee, as presently constructed, would beat
Mhm.
this Boston team in a 7-game series.
I think something that you mentioned about like them not the defense possibly falling off.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that Adrian Griffin, who is from the Nick Nurse coaching tree, I am curious to see how he decides to implement his defensive strategy for these games
Mm-hmm.
because I
Yep.
think like you might be able to get more out of some of these guys that aren't primarily known for playing great defense, but you might get a little bit more buy-in from them. I know Dame has
Mm-hmm.
never historically been a great defensive player. I don't expect him to start this year, but
Mm-hmm.
if they can at least hide him a little bit more when they're on defense,
Yeah.
that can make a whole world of a difference, especially in a series like a Boston series. If they do
Mm-hmm.
meet each other in the playoffs, I'm very, I'm ready to see how they're going to scheme against Boston because they
Yep.
know that they own the inside, but the perimeter is going to be where, are you going to be having, a switch where you're basically putting Brook Lopez on an island out there and, having a guy like Bobby Portis or Giannis having to try and like, basically try and stay in front of a smaller guy and then get blown
Yeah.
by because something like
Mm-hmm.
that. I could see something like that.
Yeah.
Real quick, did you hear what Dame said? Apparently, I was listening to a podcast earlier today, but apparently Dame said this after he got to Milwaukee, and
Mm-hmm.
it was basically a shot at Portland, and it was on a radio talk show. But he said that he did want to get traded to Miami, and I don't I get he's like frustrated at Portland.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how good of an idea that is to really be saying that before you even start the NBA season with your brand new team that just traded for you and their fans literally
Yeah.
welcomed you with open arms. Is that
Yeah.
how do you feel about that?
I mean, I don't think it was the smartest thing to do, but I think deep down, I think the fans know. I think Dame knows personally, like deep down, anyone would want to go to Miami. That lifestyle, like, they got not only they got a great team, obviously. If you put Dame on that team with Jimmy Butler and Ben, that's definitely a championship contender too. But I just feel like I think he knows deep down that Milwaukee was the best possible destination for
Mhm.
Damian Lillard, and he always expressed too that if he could play with anybody, it's Giannis.
Oh yeah.
Giannis plays for the Bucks, so it's like you know, it I see where you're going with it,
Yeah.
but I think deep down, I think Dame knows that he's got the best opportunity to win a championship in Milwaukee, and not only
Yeah.
just one either. If they could construct this roster right for the next few years, they
Mhm.
might win multiple rings. They could definitely win multiple rings.
Yeah, if they can reload and do it
Mm-hmm.
correctly, they're definitely going to have that window of opportunity.
Yeah.
Dame, we've seen guys being able to keep their careers lasting longer.
Mm-hmm.
Giannis is still in the prime of his career. I don't think the East, really outside of Boston, I don't think there's another team that really threatens Milwaukee that much. And I think
Mm-hmm.
like, hey man, Jimmy Butler has terrorized the Milwaukee Bucks ever since he joined Miami. And I will say this, that Miami team this year is not going to be able to do what they did last year,
Yeah.
especially now with some of those guys that they had last year being
Mm-hmm.
gone. And I
Yep.
think Milwaukee got better. So I can see Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee should have the slight edge right now to make it to the
They
finals,
should. Mm-hmm.
and we're
Absolutely.
going to see about that. But I mean, we could keep talking about this and keep going back and forth about with like Giannis and Dame and stuff. But I think that on our next episode, we're definitely going to talk about like our predictions for this season, like where we see teams in the standings, playoffs, all that.
Mhm.
We'll go more into depth about that.
Yep.
And obviously, like, I think one of the biggest things before we end today's like episode is, will health play a factor for both of these teams? And will who's actually going to adjust quicker to their new situation, which team's going to gel better? I know, Nick, you said, you think that the Bucks will definitely be able to. I actually
Mhm.
think Boston's going to be able to. I think that Jrue Holiday is an easier piece to fit into that. He's not is going to be the second option. I do think that Kristaps, at least from what I saw from the preseason and even off the first bucket, he already looked in sync with everybody, but his health is
Yeah.
a concern. I think that Milwaukee
Mhm.
might take a little more time because you had a guy in Chris Middleton that's been your 2 option. He's becoming a 3 option. Dame is getting elevated into that situation, and he has to learn how to play with Giannis. I'm curious to see how that's going to work out.
No,
But
I agree. I think the short term is Boston, but I think long term is Milwaukee. That's
yeah,
how I see it.
I get no, I get that, and I do see that in the long run it will work out for Milwaukee. I don't like
Mhm.
again. I get why they made the trade. It makes
Yeah.
sense. I get why Boston did the Drew Holiday trade. You have a great piece
Mhm.
right there. You need to replace somebody for Marcus Smart. Boom, you got your guy right there. I think we're gonna see, man. And obviously with the NBA season, you know, guys, we're really happy that basketball is almost back. I know
Oh,
the
I can't
preseason has
wait, man.
started.
Yeah.
And Nick, hopefully we can get some really like big guests on for this NBA season because I'd love to talk hoops with more people. And what do you got to say to the fans before we end off today's episode?
To all the fans out there, first of all, we appreciate all the support that we get from this podcast. We always get amazing comments. A lot of people are sliding up on like our social medias and stuff about how great this podcast is and stuff. So we appreciate that. And we hope to keep continuing to get your support and obviously get much more of a following as the season progresses and stuff. But to the NBA season, I'm so hyped, man. The dead period's over now. Now we're getting to preseason play. Players are starting to practice again, training camps, all that. You know, Alex, there was a lot of interesting moves this off season with a lot of
Mm.
teams. Um, it's gonna be very interesting to see how some of these, teams are gonna gel together. I think another
Oh yeah,
teams like Phoenix, Bradley Beal's on this Phoenix Suns team now with D Book and Kevin Durant. They looked like they were
yeah.
gelling in that first preseason game. I get it, it's only a preseason game against Detroit. I get it. But those three together, man, if they stay healthy, oh man. Oof.
It's gonna be scary hours out there, man. I
Mm-hmm.
agree. And like you said, I really appreciate everybody that listens to this podcast. It means a lot to us. We started this podcast a little bit over a year ago now, which is crazy to say. It's been a year
Yeah,
since we dropped our first
crazy.
episode. Um, I really appreciate everybody's support, their feedback, and
Mm-hmm.
what we can always improve on. So if there's anything that you guys want to hear us really talk about, or if you really feel like you want to come on, but you're a little scared because you think that you don't know that much NBA knowledge, it's okay. Everybody has their own way of how they watch the game, and you don't have to be a know-it-all about it because we don't all have all the
We
answers
don't
to
know it all
basketball.
either.
No,
Yeah,
no.
exactly.
I mean, I wish I could do this for a living right now, but we have to work our full-time jobs, and we try to do the best we can to prepare for these episodes, but it's hard sometimes, and that's the reality. So if you guys ever want to jump on, let us know. And yeah, I mean, I think you perfectly put it together, Nick. I'm excited for the NBA season. A lot of big story headlines that are going to happen, and we're going to see which team ends up coming out of this season as champs.
Mm-hmm.
So for myself, for Nick, this is All Ball, No Foul. Make sure to subscribe, follow us, and keep sharing our podcast. We appreciate you guys. Have a good night, and we will talk to you soon.